Mark, do you have a tech guy? I don't have the ability to rename myself. Do you have someone to name?
Sorry, Christina, could you say that again?
Do you have anybody working tech as the?
Sorry, Christina, I can't hear you. You might be muted. I'm not sure.
I can hear you, Christina. This is Curtis. I think Miranda is the host. Miranda, can you change rename?
Hey, Mark. Pretty good. We can hear you and the others can hear me. But what I was asking was if you have a tech person, somebody else said it might be Miranda who could rename me. I'm not able to rename myself.
Yeah, if you can put into the chat, Christina, what you want it to be renamed to, I think Miranda can do it.
Yeah, I don't actually have access usually. Let me see if it'll let me today. Usually I don't have access to the chat feature on this computer. It's a security issue.
Ah, got it. Well, if you say it out loud, I know Miranda's listening.
You're on mute, Mark.
Hey, let me send a chat message. That's really unusual. Okay.
Did you have the wrong headphones in, Mark?
Can you hear me, Tim?
Can you hear me?
Curtis?
Yeah. Can hear you now.
Okay.
Whew, man.
Christina, can you say something to see if I can hear you now?
Yeah, and could you let her know?
That's so weird. I can't hear you. Yeah.
But other people can hear me. Who else can hear me? Ooh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so Miranda, if you could change it to Christina Watkins, higher LAX ARP.
So Mark, you can hear me, but you can't hear Christina? No. Mark, can you hear me at all? He's having Wi-Fi. Hey, Chuck Riojas.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Thank you, Miranda.
So we're waiting on several other people to call in. Before we get started. So we'll give it several minutes just to allow people to get dialed in.
New headphones.
You guys, before we get started, just for clarification, the CWA that you're mentioning in one of the questions, is that a community workforce agreement or a PLA?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Not the California Workforce Association.
I put it together by the question, but I thought I'd make sure.
So Mark, how's your sound now? Mark,
it's good. I have these.
How's your sound now?
You're echoing, but I have these really expensive, worthless AirPods that you know, sometimes don't work. So I'm using these $10 pair I picked up in an airport, and they're a lot better.
What are you gonna do? Mr. Consul.
Good morning.
Hi, Blake.
Sorry I didn't call you back. I was back-to-back Zoom. I was going to call you later. I hope it wasn't about this.
No, and if you listen to either of the goddamn voicemails I left you, you'd know that. No.
All right, Blake is the first one officially to cuss on our webinar meeting.
Hey,
so
listen, GD is not
the door's
same as
open.
you dropping an F-bomb, Rainey, so.
Fair enough.
Did you guys get rain up in Sacramento?
We got a little a few days ago. It rained in my front yard, but not my backyard. Yeah, puzzle that one out.
Well, on your estate at Schloss Rainey, that could happen, yes, you know.
Mark, we're at 11. Should we give folks another couple of minutes? It looks like we're still having folks call in.
Yeah, I'd say give it a few more minutes for people to get on.
Okay. Yeah, the Zoom address went out this morning, so I think people are just figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
And our chair hasn't yet called in.
I can email him the link
Yeah, please do, just in case.
on it.
Would anybody like some coffee? I just made a pot.
How about something a little stronger?
I know. That must have been Peter Cooper. Oh, good. Peter's calling in from San Francisco. How's the weather there, Peter?
Hi, Juanita.
Hello, how are you? Hi, Mark.
Good. How are you doing? Nice to see your face.
I believe Secretary Sue has joined us. Are you there, Madam Secretary? So let me just double check to see if our chair has arrived. Don't think he has. It's 5 after. I think we should get started. We have a very full agenda. We have 90 minutes set aside. I think we're going to fill every second of that. We are going to kick it off with some quick welcome and introductions. I'm going to go over a little bit of kind of background to help set the stage. If Chairman Angelo Farouk joins us, he will also provide a little background on the topic of high road construction careers. Shreyas will take us through our Prop 39 outcomes, which is funding that we dedicated to really kick off the high road construction careers partnerships around the state. So we've got good data that we want to share with you. And we'll talk in a little bit of detail about the high road construction careers mechanics. Then we're going to go to the most interesting, fascinating part of the agenda, which is a roundtable discussion from the field. And we've got a number of amazing people on the call. We want to save plenty of time for that. And when we get to that point, they'll introduce themselves. Mark Cowan, who's on the Zoom, works with us at the California Workforce Development Board, will be taking us through that roundtable discussion. Then we'll finish up with some ideas, thoughts going forward. So are we okay to go ahead and kick off? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll take that as a yes. All right. Thanks, Mark. So over the last 5 years or so, the California Workforce Development Board, under the leadership of the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency and Secretary Sue, we've been investing in high road construction careers partnerships, starting with a relatively small $12 million investment in Prop 39 funding to kind of kick off demonstration grants. The high road construction careers partnerships around the state go by a variety of different names. So they're not always recognizable as high road construction careers. That's kind of a broad program at the state level. But you'll hear, hopefully, at some points, depending on what region you're in, about maybe the North Bay Trades Introduction Program, or these are just some examples, not all the programs, the East Bay Regional Trades Program, the LA Orange County Apprenticeship Readiness Fund, the Fresno Madera Tulare Kings County Building Trades Pre-Apprenticeship Program, which we'll actually talk about on this call. These programs also have multiple funding sources in many cases. And for example, in San Mateo, there's county general fund money dedicated to the high road construction careers project that really has been able to scale that. Similar diversified funding around the states with the partnerships. Each of these high road construction careers partnerships is led by a building trade council or multiple building trades councils. They include joint apprenticeship training committees, workforce development boards, schools, community colleges in many cases, and most importantly, I think community-based organizations that have deep experience in serving disadvantaged communities. Each of our high road construction careers partnerships targets women, workers from disadvantaged groups, low-income, disconnected youth, reentry, justice-involved individuals, et cetera. Each uses what is called the multi-core craft curriculum. Shreyas will go into a little more detail on that, I think, AKA MC3. That was developed by the National Building Trades. And in order to get certified to provide that curriculum, you have to go through a local building trades council. Importantly, in the way this is structured, the model, the participants get choice. They're introduced to the various trades in the region, so they get to choose what best fits them. I love to use the example because it's real of the person who went through like the ironworkers pre-construction training program, only to find out later that he was afraid of heights. So it would have been good for that individual to understand what it meant to be an ironworker before going through the grueling process of getting into the apprenticeship and in the first period of an apprenticeship there. So it's important that people understand what it takes to succeed in the various crafts before he or she makes a final decision to go the long road of an apprenticeship. The contractors and the construction trades love this the higher construction careers in the MC3 because, of course, it's doing the right thing. But it also creates pipelines of ready and able apprentices as new slots open up as construction demand increases and as the state and the federal government increasingly, and local governments and special districts invest in public works construction. It also helps in many parts of the state meet the disadvantaged worker requirements built in often to local ordinances or in project labor agreements. Also local hire requirements that are built in those cases. Did the chair of the California Workforce Board happen to join us, Mr. Farouk? I'll just hit a couple of more quick points before I hand it off to Shreyas to take us through a little more detail. I wanted to mention community workforce agreements because they open up this work by, number one, creating jobs and demand for more trades workers, and by pulling new apprentices out of high road construction careers programs and into high wage quality careers in the trades. A community workforce agreement is actually a project labor agreement with a social benefit built into it. It provides the legal mechanism to set aside new slots for apprentices from disadvantaged communities. Community workforce agreements coupled with high road construction careers partnerships connects that supply and demand directly. It's kind of the holy grail of workforce development to have supply and demand really connect directly. Community workforce agreements coupled with high road construction careers also connects job quality and equity directly, which is the essence of our high road work. The California Workforce Development Board is investing around $35 million over the course of 5 years to scale up and expand the high road construction careers work around California. It's both SB1 funding and greenhouse gas reduction funds. In the early spring, we released $15 million in SB1 funding to 11 regional partnerships serving every corner of the state. I think it's important to point out also that training is not going to fix inequality in the state alone, but solid economic development includes quality jobs and equity. So large infrastructure projects that traditionally have been used to drive employment in recession, this is kind of what we're talking about. We've done this from FDR to Obama, frankly. Puts dollars in the pockets of people who live, work, and spend in their communities as well as we build and retrofit, even for climate and economic resiliency. Our goal is to have a robust high road construction careers partnership, as I said, in every corner of the state that provides access to these quality jobs that we create through infrastructure investments. Everywhere that, for example, high-speed rail is building or anywhere that public works is being built, we have the mechanism to change people's lives by creating that access to some of the best middle-class jobs that don't require a college degree. This is Governor Newsom's California for All big vision, building a high road future, as Secretary Sue says, a high road future economy defined by quality jobs, equity, and economic justice and climate resiliency. So with that, I will hand it over to Shreyas.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Tim, and look forward to presenting a little bit more about the mechanics of our High Road Construction Careers Initiative, how we administer this multi-craft pre-apprenticeship program with training partnerships around the state. And I'll wrap up by just offering some highlights of the pilot phase of this program. As Tim mentioned, from 2014 to 2018 or 19, we had a little over $13 million to invest in 12 training partnerships around the state, delivering multi-craft pre-apprenticeship. And we saw some tremendous results. And I think, to put it succinctly, this program has really helped people change their lives, and nothing short of that. When we think about advancing economic equity and reducing inequality along race and gender and other disparities that we see in the labor market, this program has really been transformational. We know that the program has served individuals who are reentering society after incarceration. And so for folks who had, not much more than a conviction record now have an industry recognized credential the multi-craft core curriculum certificate, and are on a solid career pathway to some of the best jobs in the construction industry. With this program, we know that women and people of color who have historically been excluded from the economic opportunity offered by well-paying jobs in the construction trades now are some of the most exemplary building trades members who are actually helping recruit more folks who look like them to help diversify the construction trades workforce here in California. And for youth, particularly disconnected youth, folks who are young adults who are out of school and out of work, they now have a real purpose and the resources and the tools, quite literally, to actually excel as an apprentice and have a lifelong career and a high quality career in the construction trades. So we're really excited and always eager to talk about our High Road Construction Careers Initiative, talk about the success that we've been able to achieve. And when I say we, I'm really talking about the training partnerships out in the field. And really also share that excitement with you because we're ready to scale up this initiative from the pilot phase to really a much larger regional scale that reaches all parts of California and can serve more individuals and more of the construction industry. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna get the presentation going here. And can folks see the PowerPoint? I'm getting a blank screen here.
We can see it now, Trace. Well,
oh, okay, great. Excellent, thank you. Awesome. So yeah, so also happy National Apprenticeship Week, which brings us all together and gives us this great opportunity to, again, present on this fantastic initiative that we've been piloting and are ready to scale up. So with that, let me get to the presentation. So, first, the important thing to say here is one of the best practices which this initiative is founded upon is to leverage existing training infrastructures and build on what works. And so, oh, just got a little message. Is there, Mark, can you just let me know, are folks able to still see the slides okay?
I can see it okay.
All right. Yeah, I guess I meant
Yeah.
1 second. Thank you. Sorry for that, folks. Sorry for the little hiccup here, but getting some other messages on the screen. Anyway, so like I said, one of the best practices for workforce development across the board is, again, to build on what works and to think systematically about how we provide quality training to help disadvantaged job seekers and workers get onto a high quality career pathway. And when it comes to the construction trades, we know that apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, is the best career pathway. It is both rigorous training of 3 to 5 years, and it is gainful employment. It is quality employment in terms of the wages, the benefits, worker voice, if folks are represented by a union, to deal with important issues like health and safety on the workplace. As we know, construction is one of the most dangerous industries. So when we talk about quality careers, we're talking about more than wages and benefits, also the health and safety of the workforce and for the industry overall. This infographic here, I think, is a great illustration of some of the real advantages of the apprenticeship pipeline over other sort of random or non-apprenticeship pathways into construction trades jobs. And you can see here that sort of the two key things to highlight is with apprenticeship, there is a much tighter connection between the training and placement to quality employment opportunities, particularly through hiring halls for folks who are in a registered apprenticeship program that's run by a joint apprenticeship training committee that's jointly managed by labor and management. In the bottom, you see that that pipeline is broken at this most essential stage. And we at the Workforce Board, we want to invest in training that leads to quality employment. And again, apprenticeship offers that. And then on the far end, you'll see here that the other advantage of apprenticeship is this increase in skills and wages over time that's clearly articulated to the particular trade or craft. It's conveyed clearly to apprentices so they know what to expect and what's needed, expected of them. Now, getting into apprenticeship is not easy. There's a fairly high bar to entry in terms of the standards, like the prerequisites. For instance, the level of construction math competency that you need is quite high. And one of the other key barriers that we know about with apprenticeship is physical fitness levels of apprenticeship candidates. There are, of course, other barriers, but those are two key ones that I wanted to highlight. And then also, just navigating the system of apprenticeship is not easy. There's over 24 different construction trades or crafts. Each have their own prerequisites and timetables and sort of hiring process, if you will. And so just navigating the variety of those kinds of requirements can be daunting, especially if you're not familiar with the industry. And again, there are other barriers that we could talk about, but those are some of the key ones. And therefore, that's why we invest in pre-apprenticeship, because what we're trying to do is build on-ramps to the apprenticeship system with a particular focus on serving individuals who have barriers to employment, who are underrepresented in the industry, or face other kinds of disadvantages in the labor market. So that's why we have such a concerted effort on pre-apprenticeship, and why we're talking about that again during National Apprenticeship Week. So pre-apprenticeship is more than just a boot camp or a training program. It is really multifaceted and resource intensive, and we'll get into a little bit of that now. First, as with any kind of training program, recruitment and screening is a whole endeavor in itself to make sure that we're reaching the target populations in terms of demographics. It is really important that you have intention, real plans for outreach and recruitment and screening, which I imagine Blake will talk about a little bit later. I've heard him talk about this being one of the most important aspects of pre-apprenticeship, and the success of pre-apprenticeship is this industry, this kind of occupation is not for everyone. It takes a real commitment. So screening is also an important stage of delivering quality pre-apprenticeship. Of course, training and assessment, as Tim mentioned, all of our programs are required to use the multi-craft core curriculum, or the MC3. And I'll say a little bit more about that on the next slide. But this is one of the key features of what makes our High Road Construction Careers Initiative so distinct, is really having a standard industry recognized, industry developed curriculum that's being taught. Supportive services. This is the second key feature of our pre-apprenticeship programs and our orientation to what makes success. We're trying to reach folks who have, again, multiple barriers to employment, who are underrepresented. And so there's a variety of supportive services that are required to help people complete pre-apprenticeship, to gain the skills that are sort of specific or unique to apprenticeship and be ready to be an excellent candidate for apprenticeship. And then, of course, there are lifelong employability skills that people need to acquire, what some people call soft skills. But, in our opinion, that sort of trivializes the importance of time management, financial literacy, things of that nature that are employability skills and are really deserving of much more recognition for their importance. And then lastly, placement. Completing pre-apprenticeship is not a guarantee that anybody will get into apprenticeship. As you'll hear in just a little bit, it's really the partnerships and the relationships between pre-apprenticeship programs and registered apprenticeship programs that helps make the connection from pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship. And our programs, for each of these stages, there's a lot of work to be done. And no one entity can do all of this. The real emphasis here for our programs and for our high road approach, the emphasis is on training partnerships that bring people, diverse entities together that each have unique roles and contributions that make this all work together. So I want to just say a few words about the multi-craft core curriculum. It really is a major breakthrough for both workers and the industry. And that's why it's in state law. It's in the California Unemployment Insurance Code that if you're delivering pre-apprenticeship in construction, you must use the multi-craft core curriculum. And as Tim mentioned, the National Building Trades Unions developed the MC3. It was developed in 2007. And it was developed because there was a need to have a robust standard program nationwide that could help the building trades achieve three key goals. One, increase the number of qualified candidates for apprenticeship programs across all trades and crafts. Number two, increase the diversity of the pool of apprenticeship candidates by recruiting women, people of color, veterans, and other target populations. And three, increase the retention rate for apprentices. As some folks may know, again, getting into apprenticeship doesn't mean that you're set for life. It's still it's rigorous training and employment, and not everybody makes it. And so having a good pre-apprenticeship program really prepares and readies people for the rigors of apprenticeship. So the multi-craft core curriculum, it's a 120-hour curriculum. It's made up of 9 chapters. Most of those are required elements. Some of them are electives. And I want to point out just a few things about it that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, construction math is 40 hours, fully 1/3 of the MC3 of the curriculum is construction math. As I mentioned earlier, literacy, competency in math is one of the biggest barriers for folks getting into apprenticeship. So this is an important component that makes the MC3 a standout curriculum. Second, I want to highlight diversity in the construction industry, including 4 hours of sexual harassment training. Again, essential and vital to make sure that for everyone, people are made aware of the dynamics in the industry and ways to overcome collectively the challenges of recruiting more women, in particular into the construction trades. This has long been a big goal of the industry nationwide for decades, to make sure that women feel included and they have real opportunity to succeed as apprentices and stay in this industry long term. And then lastly, I just want to point out that the National Building Trades Union has helped us sort of go one step above the national standard. And as you see on the right-hand side, the green construction module of the curriculum is an elective. Here in California, if you receive money from the Workforce Board, we will require the green construction module be taught. The reason for that is because our high road vision really has 3 core principles: greater equity for workers, quality jobs in the industry, and making sure that everyone is doing their part to address the climate crisis and ensure that we have a resilient resiliency here in California as climate change impacts only become more intense. And so we mandate the green construction module, and even the National Building Trades are sort of reinforcing this message to make it clear to folks in the field that here in California, we've set the bar a little bit higher because we think that it's absolutely essential. And I think maybe this is a good time to also say that we really want this High Road Construction Careers Initiative to serve the entire industry in construction. We had funding from Prop 39 that was about retrofitting our K-12 schools to be more energy efficient. We now have funding from SB1, which is making a major investment in transportation infrastructure. But rather than create a training program for each of those projects, if you will, we really want to create a system that works because that's how construction, that's how the industry works. People go from project to project. If you want to have the most opportunity for employment, you want to have the most robust, you know, and have all the fundamentals of training. And so again, we think that this program, you know, whether we're talking about transportation infrastructure, clean energy development, or retrofitting buildings to be more energy efficient, or any other construction, any other project where construction trades are involved, we think that this is one system. We're designing this as one system that works for all. As I said, you know, one of the second features of our High Road Construction Careers Initiative is supportive services. And again, just to make the point that supportive services is essential for serving people with barriers to employment. As I mentioned, those supportive services kind of cover three, or they have three purposes, if you will. Helping people complete the pre-apprenticeship training, so things like stipends, childcare assistance. You know, second, gaining the skills specific to apprenticeship, right? So some folks need remedial math, financial literacy, because construction is, you know, sort of a cyclical industry with ups and downs, and people need to know how to manage their budget when they're not working. And then there's, of course, lifelong employability skills, things like time management, anger management, et cetera. And so supportive services really cover that whole gambit. And I've also sort of just broken it down here between sort of like more material support that's provided and emotional support. One other thing I'll say about this is, you know, when we think about underrepresented populations, one of the key supportive services is mentorship and peer support networks, because it's essential for women, for people of color, folks who don't see a lot of others like them in this industry. Having that kind of network of support and mentorship will really be critical throughout their career. But I just want to step back and you know, this slide here is just to make the point that it's not just about supportive services. In order to achieve our goal of greater equity to good jobs in construction, as you can see here, it really takes effort at every step of the way, from recruitment to supportive services and placement and beyond. Lastly, I'll just hit on this key component of the sort of system of pre-apprenticeship that we're building, which again emphasizes training partnerships. Of course, these partnerships are delivering program, but the real importance and real breakthrough with this model is making sure that the right folks are seated at the table. All are contributing their unique resources, whether that's information, time, etc. And so, you know, I don't have time to go through each of these different constituencies, but they each play a very unique role in the success of pre-apprenticeship. Last thing I'll say here is that, you know, what we've talked about so far is really on the training side, on the supply side of the labor market. You know, how do we deliver great training programs with training partnerships? As Tim mentioned, the demand side is also equally important. If you think about training as giving the push for workers to enter the labor market and get into high quality career opportunities, we also need things like community workforce agreements to pull people into quality careers in the construction trades. This is just a snapshot of state office building construction here in downtown Sacramento, which do have community workforce agreements. Those help pull people from pre-apprenticeship into apprenticeship and onto these job sites. It's a whole system, and all parts are needed to make it work well. I was going to share a little bit about our Prop 39 success, and I'm going to run through this very quickly since I don't want to eat into the panel that's coming up here. Let me just say a few things very quickly. We've had great success, again, with this program, not only growing the pool of candidates, but helping to diversify the pool of candidates. More than half of the folks who completed our pre-apprenticeship programs were low income. Nearly a quarter were women. And as I note here, community-based organizations were key to making sure that there was the capacity and the resources to diversify and serve people from priority populations. Very high success rate in terms of the number of folks who completed training, 78% completion rate. And again, supportive services is a key retention strategy that made that possible. Here's a snapshot of results of our pilot project from 2014 to 2018. As you can see, just over 40% got into state registered apprenticeship, and we hope that that increases over time as demand opens up, as more apprentices are in demand, the doors open, and hopefully the candidate pool of folks who've completed pre-apprenticeship, there'll be more people who can find those opportunities as they become available. So sorry to give this short shrift, but I'll end by saying we have a number of resources on our website where you can learn more about this initiative and what we've accomplished so far and what's coming next. And so very quickly, I'll just say that I'll just draw your attention to the last two dots on the slide here. Best practices reports are up on our website that explain what innovations were developed by folks in the field under Prop 39 and what are the best practices that were developed during the pilot phase. And then we not only got money from SB1 to scale up this program, we also were tasked to develop standards for multi-craft pre-apprenticeship, which you'll find on our website. And lastly, I'll just say that, there's really no better way to appreciate the impact that this program has had in people's lives and in communities across the state than hearing from pre-apprentices directly. And we have a series of videos on our website to do that. So with that, I'm going to end and turn it over to Mark Cowan, who will moderate a panel with some of the folks who have been leading exemplary pre-apprenticeship programs in the state, who can talk much more directly about their experiences and the success that they've had, and also perhaps what's in the hopper going forward. Thanks.
Before we hand it over to Mark Shreyas, thank you for a wonderful job. This is Tim again. I did want to acknowledge again Secretary Sue, Secretary of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, who is listening in, not participating, providing moral support. Secretary Sue has been an amazing champion for this work, really helped build it out, and said when she came on board that we were doubling down on the high road, and that's exactly what we've been doing. As part of the National Apprenticeship Week and the celebration of California apprentices and apprenticeship programs, Secretary Sue is actually going to lead a roundtable discussion today at 2 o'clock on a Zoom. So if you haven't signed up for that, do so. I think that's going to be really terrific. So with that, we're saving questions till the end. I think a lot of what you heard, you may have some questions about some of it that may be addressed with this next panel discussion that Mark Cowan is going to lead. So we'll take questions maybe, Mark, after your panel. Does that sound right?
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
Okay. Ball's in your court.
Right. Okay. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Mark. I'm a field specialist with the High Road Field Team at the California Workforce Development Board. And I'll be moderating this panel discussion. We have about 50 minutes, slightly less than that now, and 4 excellent panelists, each of which have some great insights to share on HRCC. So I'm going to be channeling Kristen Welker, the moderator of the second presidential debate, in my approach to time management here. I will cut your mics if you go over time. I'm kidding, I won't do that. But so starting with you, Chuck, to kick us off, could you tell us briefly just about yourself and what you do? And then after Chuck, we'll move over to Blake, Juanita, and Christina.
Yes, be happy to. Good morning, everybody. Chuck Riojas from the Fresno Madera Tulare Kings Building Trades Council. I'm an electrician by trade, been in the industry 34 years. Happy to serve as the elected head of building trades in my area, going on or serving in my third term. And happy to be here, happy to speak to this particular subject, and really looking forward to the presentation and the questions.
Hi, I'm Blake Consul. I'm the Executive Director for the Fresno Regional Workforce Development Board. I've been the director here in Fresno now for 18 years. Prior to that, I was the Workforce Board Director at the City of San Jose. And then before that, I worked in Los Angeles County for a private industry council. Been doing this type of stuff now for 27 years. One of the best things, though, projects I've had to work with is that for the last 11 years, our workforce board has partnered with the Fresno Madera Kings Tulare Building Trades Council to offer multi-craft pre-apprentice training. 2 weeks ago, we graduated our 31st cohort over those 11 years, many of which have been funded by grants from the state board. But where they haven't been funded by the state board, we fund them locally with our formula WIOA, and prior to that, WIA dollars. And excited to talk about this topic.
Hello, my name's Juanita Douglas, and my story is I spent 17 years as a commercial carpenter. That's bridges, high rises, overpasses, anything to do with concrete. And then in '99, I went and I spent another 15 years as a land surveyor, mostly in the city of San Francisco. So May 2014, I decided I was tired of working. I was tired of the field. I wasn't gonna work anymore. So May 31st, 2014, I retired. That lasted about 3.5 minutes. So I got really, really extremely bored. So I started looking and searching for something to do. And I ended up spending part-time with the pre-apprentice training programs. In 2018, I ran a night and weekend cohorts for Rising Sun. And I found out I loved it. By September, I was working full-time. So now I'm their head construction instructor for Rising Sun. We run a full women's cohorts once a year and 2 co-ed cohorts. And 3 of my favorite projects in the 30+ years that I was in the trade. My favorite was working for Habitat for Humanity in Fresno, California. I worked there as their construction manager for 18 months. My second favorite was, and this is actually where I'm really involved in the building. I'm not just a hand on the project. I did all the construction layout for the Anaheim Pond in Anaheim. And I also was the head surveyor on the 3rd Street Light Rail and also the Transbay Terminal here in San Francisco. Thank you.
Oh, Christina Watkins with Parsons Constructors, Inc. And I do the day-to-day management of the Higher LAX Apprenticeship Readiness Program. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So growing up, I didn't have the best home life. So at 17, I enlisted in the Army, ended up spending 2 years in Iraq, went to college, was working on a PhD in psychology when I realized that I didn't really want to be a psychologist. So I walked with my master's and ended up working in employment. And from there, when we were getting ready to launch the Higher LAX program, I got pulled into that. And so I got to bring this really diverse skill set into setting up and running that program. And I was really drawn to the opportunity to help individuals change their lives without volunteering to get shot at. I want people to have a lot more options. And so now I spend my days, I do everything from the recruitment to the placement and retention. The only thing I do not do, don't have anything to do with at all. I couldn't even build a bookshelf from scratch. People like Juanita handle that lovely skill, and I love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you all. Christina, just to follow up on that, do you mind elaborating a bit on how LAX Hire recruits, prepares and supports participants looking to get into apprenticeship, and what sort of backgrounds those participants tend to come from?
So Hire LAX Apprenticeship Readiness Program is a little bit unique in that we are sponsored by the airport here in Los Angeles. So we are working on behalf of LAX. And so our recruitment is very diverse. We have one of the lowest barriers to entry of any program. We don't require a driver's license. We get people who have criminal backgrounds. We get people who straight out of high school. They come from every walk of life. We primarily try to recruit, especially right by the airport, which has the added benefit of drawing in more underrepresented minorities into the construction fields. I don't know how many people are aware, but in construction in general in the Los Angeles area, the area is about 9 to 10% African American, yet they make up less than 5% of tradesmen. So we're heavily invested in that. But basically all walks of life, we are very blessed. We get a lot of applicants. So we have an interview program, and really we're looking for people who need the program. So who couldn't just start working on their own. They have some sort of barrier in the way, but not so many barriers that we can't get them to work at the end of the program. So it's a fine balancing act. We do have 240 hours, so we have people working out. So we're able to get them to where they need to be physically. We do the extensive math like everybody else. So it's more about, we also don't require a high school diploma or GED. So it's really about pulling in everyone we can and getting them attached and connected somewhere into construction.
Thank you, Christina. It sounds like a fascinating and kind of unusual program. So, you know, that's really cool stuff. It's nice to hear about it. As Tim and Shreyas have said, the HRCC initiative aims to advance apprenticeship in the trades as a reliable pathway to the middle class for disadvantaged Californians. Juanita, Rising Sun has done stellar work on this, particularly when it comes to women in the trades. What sort of backgrounds do your students come from, and how do you address the challenges they face as women entering construction?
First, when you started Rising Sun, it's me. We have a team of 5, and we have a program manager that is just probably one of the best recruiters that I've ever worked with. And we go out to the women's shelters. So a lot of the women, we have a lot of homeless mothers. I've had a couple of women where they had 4 children, they're sleeping in their cars. And we interview, the only requirement in our program is that you have to have a high school diploma or a GED. We offer them mental health work. We offer them, we have a full-time case manager on the job. And then the advantage of being a female that spent 30 plus years out there in the field, in the ground, in the dirt, I can explain to them the reality of what it's really like to work out there in the field. Our curriculum consists of twice a week, we have a personal trainer that comes in and work with them for the physical aspect. There's a special program that I present it's an expectation to get into the labor's union for the mental and heavy work that's required for construction. So that's done twice a week also. And if they don't pass that, then they don't get through the class. So our goal is to get as many people as possible. A big percentage of our people are reentry. I've visited over 6 prisons personally in the state of California, federal and state prisons. Chowchilla, the one in Fresno, I've been there. And we work directly with the parole officers and the probation officers. So they're constantly sending. There's 2 particular young men. One spent 30 years at Folsom, one spent 30 years at Soledad. They are both full-time employees. And one that was at Folsom went to work 7 days after he graduated from our program. So, and then there's a whole year of help after. So we work with them all the time. I mean, my students know that they can call me or text me anytime. I always answer my phone because we're there. The single mothers, the ones that's homeless, we're always there to do whatever's necessary to help them get where they need to get.
That's amazing. And it's true, you do always answer your phone, because I've called you a lot over the last few days, and you're very, very kind. Thank you so much, Juanita. Here I wanted to take a moment to discuss something that we've touched on earlier. There's a lot of 3-letter acronyms that are often used to refer to this, but here I'll just call it a community workforce agreement, and to talk about their place in HRCC. So the model, as Shreyas and Tim have said, starts with quality jobs with state-approved apprenticeship programs in the trades. And one of the mechanisms for creating these jobs and stimulating demand for new apprentices are community workforce agreements. So I want to turn to Chuck and just ask him to explain what a CWA is from the perspective of someone who's a leader in the building trades. And then other panelists, feel free to jump in from your perspectives if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you, sir. A community workforce agreement has been known by different titles. It's been a community benefits agreement, a project labor agreement, project security agreement. They're all the same. Whatever acronym you use, they're community documents. Basically, they define the parameters of a construction project, and it's a specific construction project. And so what I like to say is it brings stability to some of the unstable parts of construction. Construction can float around, especially when you're using, multiple affiliates, multiple construction processes. It brings some stability. That, in a nutshell, it's 90% boilerplate on all PLAs or CWAs. Where we get the flexibility and whether it's important to this conversation is the local hire provisions and the apprenticeship language that's being used. When you target the underserved communities that are represented in our building trades pre-apprenticeship classes, that's where really the rubber meets the road. The intent of these particular agreements is to move those underserved communities into apprenticeship. And when I talk about apprenticeship, it's joint labor management apprenticeship. It's viable apprenticeship, defined as in many different ways, but generally they're joint labor management apprenticeships. I'll leave you at that now. But so you make contractually a tie to our building trades pre-apprenticeship program, and the language is actually noted in the agreement that as a feeder into the apprenticeship programs, the participants of our pre-apprenticeship program, be it Slingshot, Prop 39, and the Fresno Madera Cherokee Building Trades pre-apprenticeship program. So they're noted in there as beneficiaries. And so we have a 30% set aside. In most of the agreements that I've negotiated over the past year, there's a 30% set aside of new apprenticeship slots for the graduates of our program. And so that seems to resonate with the awarding bodies. That's the language pretty much that I insist on. And so they are a protected class, I guess you could say, and they're targeted. It's a targeted hiring process. And so I'm happy to know within the last year, we've been able to secure 3 CWAs to the tune of $250 million. And so those provide the pathway that completes the loop, so to speak, when you're talking about the use of CWAs and pre-apprenticeship and multi-craft
curriculum. All right. Does anybody else want to come in on that, or shall I move on?
If I could just real quick. So from the owner side, because like I said, Hire LAX is sponsored by LAX. So we are also the project labor agreement administrators for the airport, which means we oversee the construction contractors at the airport. And the project labor agreement we've been working on there, it's 20 years old. It's one of the oldest in the country, I think. So it has a 30% set aside for local hire, and we've basically built everything we do out of that. So it doesn't take a lot, like the more specific you can get, the better it is, but it doesn't actually take a lot if you have an owner and primes who take responsibility for pushing it. We've had something like, I think 200 and something people sponsored at the airport in the last couple of years. Sorry, I don't have exact figures in front of me. All through nothing but the 30% local hire requirement, and inside of the airport, them pushing, get the contractors in their bids to up their game. So they now include points for plans to sponsor, plans to go above and beyond. So they're now awarding with this social mandate, and it's worked incredibly well. And it gives the owner a lot of publicity, and it's just the right thing to do, really. The airport is surrounded by some heavily impacted areas, some heavily impoverished areas. And so it's only right and it's only fair that those people should be working at the airport. And that's where they get their start, and that's where they enter the apprenticeship. And in addition, you know, it's also better for the environment. They're not driving in from another county, which is a big problem here in LA. They could walk to work if it came down to it. And so from the owner side, there's a lot of benefits to these agreements as well. You know, we're really talking heavily the social aspect, bringing up people who are suffering and in need, but this is good for the owner as well. Like, this is not an additional obligation as long as you look at it as a benefit, because it is. So we've been very happy to be a part of all of it. And I consider myself very blessed to sit in like this weird position where I'm like, I'm working for the owner, I'm working for the program. I love it.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina and Chuck. Chuck and Blake, please come in if Blake, if you want. Just to expand on what you were saying a little bit, Chuck, could you describe how the CWAs actually pull from apprenticeship programs? Like, what does that, like, in other words, what does that relationship between the MC3 provider and the contractor, the JATC, whoever it may be, what does that consist of? And then maybe also on top of that, go into the importance of that pre-apprenticeship program being multi-craft. So I suppose there's two questions there rolled into one.
Okay, you froze up on that first question, but I think I got the gist of it. If you wanted to repeat that real quick, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just asking what the relationship between the administrators of the CWA, like the CWA itself, and the MC3 program consist of, like, day to day. What would that be like? And then the second part of my question, I think you heard, is what the importance of it being multi-craft.
Yeah, I'll start with the second question, because that's kind of the easier one there. That it has to be multi-craft, because that lends the validity to it. And kind of to the point from Shreya's is, you want to be able to have the participant experience multiple trades, so that they realize what they're getting into, or have a better idea of what trade they're getting into. I lucked out when I came into the IBW. Electrical work just happened to fit me, but that's the one that I gained access to. We've had situations where somebody experienced the sheet metal workers and they say, that's what I want to do, or the plumbers, or the IBEWs. Multi-craft gives it the buy-in from all of the trades. It's nationally accredited, which helps bring the validity to it, the gold standard to it. The awarding bodies understand that. Everybody likes the coalition of the bigger unit. And so when I talk to the awarding bodies, be it city councils or boards of supervisors or trustees, they like it that the buy-in is not singular, that it's it's with everybody involved, the whole building trades council. And so that lends the validity to it. But also too, when you have multiple affiliates, multiple crafts involved, the opportunities of apprenticeship placement are greater because of the participation. You're not signing a document, a CWA, and then looking into what this means. They are a part of it. They have buy-in with it. I actually use the JATCs to do the training for my multi-craft program. in the Central Valley. So I hope that answered your questions.
It does. It does. Thank you. Blake, I'll turn to you. It's unique for a workforce board to work so closely with a local building trades council. How did that come to be, and what sort of an effect has that had on workforce development in your region?
Sure. About 11 years ago, we received a grant from the state, a regional grant. The state classifies the valley as being the 9 counties that stretch from San Joaquin in the north to Kern in the south, or Stockton to Bakersfield, with Fresno in the middle. And we received a grant, and part of the grant was to do sector analyses on what we considered to be the growth sectors. We contracted with a company out of Monterey called ADE, Applied Development Economics. And really, as an afterthought, we had some money left in the contract. And I talked to the principal at ADE, and I said, can you aggregate the value of public infrastructure construction in our 9-county area? And he paused. He said, yeah. He goes, those are all public contracts. We could do that, sure. So when they issued their report, and that was a report that went from 2010 to 2020, they identified, independent of high-speed rail, $24 billion of approved public infrastructure construction in the valley. And I speak for Fresno, we were gobsmacked. That's the apt word. What the heck is going on here? See, the way the feds shave off that money, you don't really see the punch of it, or the state either. Boy, we saw that there was that much construction happening in our area, in our county. We started asking questions, luckily asking questions of people like Chuck, then to find out that if the local halls could not fill the requests for union workers in a specified time frame, that this wider call went out to Los Angeles and the Bay Area, and union workers were imported, or even from other states, were imported into our area. Now there was something at the gut level that was just unsettling about this. Here we're in counties that have double-digit unemployment, or at that time had for decades. We're hurt. We don't have the variety of industry clusters that happen in other parts of the state. And here we have this work occurring right in our county, and the jobs are going unfilled by locals because there's not a sufficient supply of trained human capital to apply. And that's we said we have to do something. And that was really the genesis of this with Chuck, how we jumped in with both feet.
And Blake, just to follow up on that, how long did it take from when you decided to do it for it to really get up and running with like successful cohorts and lots of placement?
Well, okay. When God closes a door, he opens a window. So right at the time that all this was happening, for about a 5 or 6 year stretch with Pacific Gas and Electric, when they had this really neat corporate VP named Von Ton Quinlivan, we were the star child in Fresno of their Power Pathways training. And then they had a change in corporate policy that restricted prospective applicants to apply for jobs only within a certain radius of where they lived. And that stopped our Valley residents from being able to apply for PG&E jobs in the Bay Area or in Northern California. And there was an insufficient supply of those jobs in our local area to maintain the program. So in the PG&E model, we had been doing, training that involved tools. We were involved in training to a union standard because almost all PG&E workers become members of the IBEW out of Vacaville. So we had some of the components there. And right at the time when PG&E implemented that new policy, on a grant from the state, we were training a cohort of recently returned veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq. and had been informed by PG&E that there would be no jobs for these people. And we said, we can't let this happen. And so that was literally, we morphed the one program into another. And Chuck, God bless him, you know, picking up the whole thing running. And I should say too, that this is a number of years ago now, but I believe 3 or 4 of the veterans who were in that initial cohort are now journeymen. So they not only took the pre-apprentice training, they did the 5-year apprenticeship, and they're now journeymen. So we have success portraits at every step along the way.
Mark, if I may add, it did take some time. I mean, Blake and I went through countless meetings, hundreds of hours of conversations in learning what it took to be an effective or a candidate for the apprenticeship program. Kind of speaking to the vetting process. The vetting process is the building block. It is essential. It is the cornerstone of what we do. And I find that the workforce investment boards do it best. We could try to do it at a building trades level, but the partnership between the WIBs and the building trades councils, I think it can't be understated. In my opinion, you would absolutely need it, because I don't have the infrastructure or the outreach or the personnel that a WIB would have that Blake brought to the table. So it just took a lot of conversations and understanding, me educating Blake as to what it is we do, how we do it, why we do it. And in Blake's world, he would introduce me to what it is and the process they have. The wraparound services are immeasurable. It's where we can serve a broad breadth of the community, because, kind of to Christina's point, they don't need to have algebra. They don't need to have a high school diploma. They don't need to, I don't want to make 25 electricians out of every class. And so what the WIB would do is they would give me a cross section of the community. And that's what makes it work. Blake likes to say in other presentations, you kiss a lot of frogs to get to the principal. I mean, there was one class we went through 400 people, we'd seat a class of 5. So that's the success of it. So when you have that type of intense effort in the beginning to make them successful, because I didn't start out with project labor agreements. I mean, this is a 10-year process to where now it's starting to bear the fruit of what we've done. But we didn't sit back. To Blake's point, those pre-apprentices that are now journeymen, I was in conversations with all of those apprenticeship programs, with all of the business agents, and constantly reinforcing, access to apprenticeship for these demographics because of the agenda, or because of what we had to do moving forward and take advantage of the billions of dollars of infrastructure, and knowing that was coming up. So it takes an intense effort by a lot of organizations within your local area, because I think Christina said it best, alone we can't do it. I mean, one entity by itself cannot bring about the successes that we're having or that we want to have with SB1, with the the workforce readiness program moving forward.
Thank you so much, Chuck. I'm going to start kissing frogs to get that, Prince. An issue that often comes up around this work relates to retention. It can happen, and to an extent, it's unavoidable that a participant gets placed in an apprenticeship program, and then for a variety of reasons, they may drop out or wash out after a few months. To start with you, Juanita, and then please join in from your perspective too, Christina. What are some ways to help ensure that participants who have been placed in an apprenticeship stay there, like to improve retention? Yeah, thank you.
So the main thing is to when I'm teaching class, with construction, there's 2 things that work out there. Show up. If you're on time, you're late. And work and follow the rules and the orders when you're there. If you're supposed to start work at 7 o'clock, you're late at 7 o'clock. So they've got to understand. So even when the class is teaching, I mean, we literally clock in, but they're late. So my main course that I push 100% of the time in the class, 45 minutes to a half an hour before, stand there waiting on the superintendent. When you walk on that job site, you do what they tell you to do, even if it's not your job. You do what they ask you to do. And you do it with a smile on your face, even if you don't want to, even if you think you're being taken advantage of. But if you do that, just from my personal experience, within the time period that's there, then they know you're going to show up. Then they know that you're going to be there and you work. And if you have an issue that you think you need to open your mouth about, call me first before you open it. And let me speak to you first before you decide what you want to say about that situation. Because being a person of color, especially a male of color, it's a little bit more difficult out there, but there is a way to circumvent this. Whether it's fair or not, there's a way to circumvent it. So I've had participants and students actually at lunchtime call me and tell me the situation, and I've been able to walk them through, and they've been able to maintain and keep their jobs. And then also I have a lot of contacts with 30 plus years. So I'm able to call the contractors or have them call me first instead of laying them off if something is going on, because it's so difficult to get through that process in the construction field. It's a very special area to work in, and you have to know how to circumvent it. So my main goal is to make them understand they need to be to work on time, and they need to do what they're told when they get out there. And once that's done, you started being trust. I worked 30 plus years. I never drew any unemployment. Every time a job was over, someone else was calling me. And I know that's not a lot of people can say that, but it's because you do what you have to do to make the money, and don't let them take your money under any circumstances.
I'd say Juanita hit most of the high points there. We call it construction culture. We consider that the number one thing we teach, because their apprenticeship program will teach them how to do their exact trade. But if they can't show up, if they can't follow directions, if they have to puff up and talk back every time they're called out, they're not going to last. So we actually have another group called Second Call, who comes in and teaches once a week for 2 hours. It's basically like group therapy, finding your triggers and learning how to deal with them. It's one of the few areas where military heavily overlaps. It's very hierarchical. You got to know who you're reporting to. You got to know who's telling you what to do, and you got to do it. You're basically being given orders. Just do it. The only time you say no is if it's not safe. Otherwise, you just do it. And you're busy all the time. There's no standing around with your hands in your pocket. You pick up a broom. Don't have something to do, go ask someone. Just being busy all the time, being the person for the job, because they can teach you the hard skills. You have to be the person for the job, though. Additionally, like I said, we're in a great position. So we also brought on recently a full-time placement person to work with us. He helps us place our graduates, and then when he's not working with placing or helping to replace our graduates when they come off work, because we also work for LAX, he goes out and he pulls them from other MC-free programs, and he helps the other MC-free programs get to work at the airport. So it's been great having him. And then he also handles most of our phone calls, because he's I'm going to mess it up, somewhere around 25 years as a carpenter. So they call him when they got questions on the job. We had one young woman who every single day she was calling him up. I think they're going to fire me. I think they're going to fire me. And she was psyching herself out, and she was getting ready to quit before they could fire her. She's still working. It was all a mind game, and it's an interesting industry. And I'm not going to lie, there's hazing that goes on. There's a lot of mess up things, and getting them to understand that part's a mind game. They're trying to get you to quit so they can bring on their cousins, so they can bring on their nephew, so they can bring on their son. It's a mind game. You got to stick it out. And then once they see that you're going to stick it out and you're going to be one of their best workers, in the end, they want that money. And so they need their best workers. And it's a game until then.
Beautiful. thank you so much, Christina and Juanita. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left for questions, if anybody has any, and then we'll go over and move it over to Tim. So we'll just wait silently for like a minute, and if nobody asks any questions.
Mark, there's a question in the chat box from Julina. We're seeing some shifts. For those of you who can't see it, given the construction culture, do you see any cultural shift as a result of the call to address structural racism, equity, and social justice? And I would say yes and no. It is a slow industry to change, but there are things that are changing and there are things that are moving. Here in LA, our workforce is getting more and more diverse every day. I don't want to call anybody out, but we have a wide variety of workers. We're not quite there yet, but we are getting closer. And now management's more likely to step in when they see something, which is a change. We actually had a project at LAX get completely shut down for a day for retraining because of one incident that they did not want repeated, and they just handled it. It's good to see management investing the time to push down that this will not be tolerated on our job sites. And once everybody kind of understands that, you start seeing more change. Yeah, it's growing. It is changing and growing, but it is slow. It is not happening fast enough.
Yeah, it has improved a lot since I started in '84. I mean, a lot. I mean, there's superintendents and stuff that I can actually get on the phone with now that it really gave me a hard time when I was working. And I can tell them, hey, I have this young lady, she's first period apprentice carpenter, will you hire her? And there's no questions asked, they don't even interview, and they take her in. So, and a lot of improvement is going on in the field now. A lot of the people, young men, young women working there, and like Christina said, the owners are understanding and getting it, that this is the only way that we're going to be able to continue to survive and live here in America. But I have found, I would say 75% better than when I was in '84. Because I mean, I can walk out on a job site now and see at least 1 or 2 females almost on every job site. So it has improved a lot, and it will keep improving as long as we can keep giving these people the skills and the stuff that they need. So when they walk out on that job site, the contractor is going to know that they're getting really, really good workers that's ready to go to work and ready to learn.
Thank you so much, Juanita. I don't see any other questions at the moment, but I'll wait like, oh, there we go. Given the construction, oh, sorry. No, that was a thank you. Never mind. Silly me. Anyway, thank you so much, folks, for coming on the panel and sharing your wisdom and your experience on this. It has been fascinating, and thank you for doing the work too, because it's incredibly important. And if one person achieves economic security out of it, or a good job, it can change the lives of everybody around them. So yeah, thank you so much. And with that, I think Tim, I think we're right on time for you to give your closing remarks.
Thanks, Mark. Terrific panel discussion. If anybody else has questions or comments, please feel free to jump in. I see Ann McMonigal, who runs the LA Orange MC3 partnership, is on the line. Chris Hannon was on for a bit, had to jump off, who was with the LA Orange Building Trades Council. So you guys, Ann, feel free to jump in. I think my closing remarks are really around the broader notion of high road. The way we see high road, the basis of it is that what we want to achieve is equity, but you can't have equity without job quality. They're inextricably linked. So we have to figure out how to link up training pathways to the best quality jobs. So the way we've approached this is kind of turning traditional workforce on its head, where we don't start with programs and try to push people out in labor markets and hope they attach. Instead, we do what Blake talked about. You figure out what's driving the regional economy, where the best quality jobs are, and then you partner up with those industries and with folks who are leaders in those industries to create pathways into those really good quality jobs. That's how we're going to change labor markets, and that's how we're going to impact equity. So we create jobs in construction. We invest in capital development around infrastructure. And then we count on Chuck Riojas and his colleagues around the state to sell to local jurisdictions, schools, colleges, counties, cities, the benefits of community workforce agreements on those projects, and how those community workforce agreements, because that infrastructure is being built, is going to impact regional and local employment in the way that we need to impact regional and local employment. Chuck has said this a number of times, and he can speak for himself, of course, but he doesn't go in as the head of the building trades. He goes in as a workforce person, talking about how we're really going to impact employment in the right ways and building more equity. And I think that is the way we do it. And that work is happening around the state because we've built these high road construction careers partnerships. We can deliver on that promise of impacting regional and local employment. We can deliver on the promise of equity. Now, we're still building these things. We're still investing in them. And we've got to find ways to stabilize the investments in those partnerships so that we can grow them, scale them up, and really, really move the needle on equity in the state of California to meet the governor's vision of a California for all. When we have the community workforce agreements and we have a strong high road construction careers program, it creates a pull. So we're not pushing people into labor markets and hope they attach to a good job. We're pulling people into good jobs. That's the way we need workforce to work. That's the change we're pushing around the state of California. A good example of this, and I think it's important to illustrate because of the audience on the phone, is we have community workforce agreements on the state buildings. That was done with the Department of General Services. So all the state buildings going up around Sacramento and the region, the broader capital region, have community workforce agreements that create slots for workers from disadvantaged communities and pull from the pre-construction training program, the High Road Construction Careers Partnership in Sacramento. It works. So if we do that more and more, as we invest in infrastructure, not just at the state level, but at the local and regional levels, we will move the needle. I want to thank everybody who joined us, and I really want to thank the panelists for sharing their expertise and their knowledge and their insights. We act like we're doing stuff in Sacramento, but in fact, we're hitching our wagons to really smart, creative people like you who are making things happen. So we respect what you're doing and we honor what you're doing. So thank you very much. And I believe that concludes our session unless there are any other closing thoughts. Okay, delightful. Thanks again for joining us. Happy National Apprenticeship Week. And I hope you have a chance to tune in at 2 o'clock for the roundtable with Secretary Sue and current and former apprentices to talk about their experiences. Thank you very much. We're giving back 7 minutes to your day.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Thank you, Juanita. Thanks, Blake. Thank you, Chuck. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Juanita.